Well, there's no episode of Yashahime this week, and as such, I thought I would do something a little bit special and post a full Yashahime Retrospective, where I cover every single episode that we've had so far and kind of talk about them all in one place. Since we're about half the series down, I thought this would be a good point, and at the moment I'm writing this, I'm assuming this is going to be a bit of a longer video, so if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy it, that would mean an absolute ton to me. With all that being said, let's kick things off with episode 1, Inuyasha Since Then. The first episode of Yashahime covered chapter 559 of the Inuyasha manga, a special chapter written and released by Rumiko Takahashi to support the Tohoku earthquake in 2011. We begin the episode with TOWA being captured by a feudal lord, something that we would see the lead up to in episode 7, and we also see his vassal, who is the owl demon Yotsume, in disguise. They press TOWA for knowledge about the future, however, when TOWA says she doesn't know anything about it, they bring out a bike seat and a history textbook. All of this before Yotsume tells her a story about a famous priestess who came from the future, which we know to be Kagome. We jump into the past about 6 months after Kagome returned to the feudal era, and we get quick updates on what the original cast has been up to. Sango and Miroku have had 3 kids at this point, and Miroku is still out there slaying demons with Inuyasha. Shippo is training to become a powerful fox demon, but at the end of the day, he's still Shippo. And Kagome is training to be a priestess. The conflict for the episode arises when a landslide releases a demon named Roothead, which was sealed away by Kikyo. Roothead has been attacking villagers and leaving nothing but headless skeletons in his wake. So Inuyasha and Miroku are charged with taking care of him. They go to check out the tomb where the demon was originally sealed and find one of Kikyo's arrows. So they head to Kaede's place to ask if she knows anything. So a few things up until this part of the episode that are either interesting or relevant. Firstly, Yotsume is also seen in the flashback, meaning that Kiremaru's demons are at least present and possibly taking an interest in Inuyasha and Kagome at this point. Second, Kagome mentions a poem from the MEIOJU, which, if you're interested in learning about, I also have a video on that you can check out. And finally, Sesshomaru makes an appearance here and talks about how Roothead is not a very powerful demon, but he is very persistent. Anyways, back over to Kaede's place, she tells us that Roothead was a demon which Kikyo sealed shortly before meeting Inuyasha. And she probably chose not to slay it because she was just tired of killing demons. And when you consider how she didn't kill Inuyasha when they first met, I guess there's something to that point. Anyways, Inuyasha decides to deal with the issue himself without telling Kagome to avoid bringing up the topic of Kikyo, and if you've ever had a jealous significant other, you probably know the feeling. The choice is kind of taken away from him though when Roothead hunts her down and attacks, thinking that she's Kikyo and demanding the sacred jewel. Luckily, best girl Sango is there to fend off the demon, and Inuyasha and Miroku show up shortly afterwards and are forced to explain the situation before the gang heads out to slay Roothead. At first they're dealing with what seems like an endless horde of Rootheads who keep growing out of the ground, and the group manages to slay a chunk of them, but Miroku is definitely struggling without the use of his wind tunnel, something he aims to resolve later in the series. Sesshomaru shows up to protect Rin, but does not actually get involved with the fight, and we get a decent chunk of fights with the group slaying dozens of Roothead bodies, but Kagome realizes that the main body must be hiding somewhere. Just then a sacred arrow flies by and plants itself in the ground. Kaede had shot Kikyo's arrow from earlier in an attempt to lure the demon out. Seeing this, Kagome then acts as bait, and its giant mouth emerges and tries to eat her before Inuyasha saves her. With its whole body now out in the open, Inuyasha and Kagome go for one final attack to wipe the demon out. However, a fragment of Roothead survived and bound itself to the sacred tree. We get some moments with the original cast being super wholesome and cute, and then we jump back to TOWA. Setsuna and Moroha burst through the wall and come in to rescue her, and Moroha sniffs out Yotsume, attacking him and scaring him off. TOWA then grabs the bike seat and the book, and they head out. Episode 2, The Three Princesses. The episode acts as a proper introduction to the main trio, Setsuna, TOWA, and Moroha. It opens with a shot of the 4-year-old Setsuna and TOWA playing together and living in a forest. However, one night they wake up to the forest on fire, a point which we'll learn about next week in episode 14. During the fire, the twins become separated when TOWA gets scared and lets go of her sister's hand for a moment. She eventually comes to her senses and goes back though, but a tree falls down and splits them up. When TOWA gets around the tree, Setsuna's already missing, and she begins to search for her sister, but the silver rainbow pearl in her eye begins to glow as a time portal opens behind her and pulls her into the modern era where she meets Sota. He almost immediately realizes where she's from, and together they look for Setsuna, but when they fail to find her, he decides to adopt her into his family. Jump forward 10 years, and TOWA is being harassed by a bunch of bullies despite changing schools to avoid them. And she easily wins the fight, because she's half demon. This does result in her being late for school though because of this encounter, and we meet her teacher, Osamu Kirin, who's totally not a villain in any way, shape, or form, just ignore his voice actor and his name. Anyways, back in the past we catch up with Moroha and see her using her sword, the Kurikara Maru, and she's attacked by Hisui, who accuses her of attacking a nearby village, but he is stopped shortly afterwards by Kohaku. Moroha, despite this, is about to put on the rouge when Setsuna shows up and holds her at the edge of her Naginata. They have a quick sparring match, and Setsuna's pearl begins to glow, giving her strength, but also luring out Mistress Three Eyes. This is the granddaughter of Mistress Centipede from the original series, and Moroha's attacks don't seem to be doing anything to her, leading Moroha to switch to her bow with the Heavenly Arrow Barrage for the first time. Three Eyes manages to steal Moroha's red pearl and has a mini transformation. Soon after, we see Setsuna taking the demon on, and we have our first look at her Cyclone attack. However, Moroha gets involved with a Crimson Dragon Wave, which frees the demon, and this time Three Eyes manages to steal the gold pearl from Setsuna, transforming even further. Back in the present, TOWA is showing off the Kikujumonji to the camera, but while she's taking care of it, the bullies from earlier capture her family and hold them hostage. She shows up, beats the hell out of these guys for a bit, and Roothead opens a portal behind her, in which he sends Setsuna, Moroha, and Mistress Three Eyes from the past into the present. Recognizing Setsuna, immediately TOWA jumps at Mistress Three Eyes to protect her, slashing down with her sword and immediately breaking it. Episode 3, The Dream Butterfly. The episode picks up where the last one left off. Three Eyes goes in to attack TOWA, but the pearl in her eye glows, and the broken sword becomes a blue energy blade, which manages to stab through Three Eyes. The wounded demon charges towards the Higurashi family, and Setsuna manages to get up and slay the demon by sticking her Naginata into its skull, with the theme of TOWA not finishing off demons becoming a pretty relevant factor over the next few episodes. The pearls all return to their respective owners, and TOWA explains to Setsuna that they're sisters, and all about what happened, but naturally, Setsuna had no idea what she was talking about, and was just confused and angry at it. Despite this, Moroha mentions how they both smell like Sesshomaru. And speaking of that, back at Kaede's place we get a flashback of Sesshomaru returning to the village when his twins were still infants and taking them away, with Setsuna returning back to the village by herself years later and approaching Kaede. Later, Kaede discusses how the Bone Eater's well was made from the wood of the sacred tree, which had temporal properties. Back in the modern era, a demon named Hitokon manages to possess TOWA, and we get a battle between the two sisters. However, Hitokon shortly after attempts to jump into TOWA's sister Mei and use her as protection, but Setsuna puts everyone to sleep before using demon-slaying poison to exorcise the demon, apparently not using it on TOWA because she wanted to test her. Once everyone wakes up, Sota and his wife offer to let Moroha and Setsuna stay with them until they find their way back home. Moroha struts around the house naked, unaware of what modern norms are like, and we cut to TOWA's room where TOWA appears to be asleep and the other two are talking about Setsuna, mentioning how she can't sleep or dream, and they talk about the dream butterfly for a short moment, filling TOWA with guilt and regret for not being able to protect her sister before the episode comes to a close. Episode 4, The Gateway to the Past. The girls decide to go back to the past and capture the dream butterfly. They spend a few days in the modern era, during which Moroha chills with some old people, Setsuna becomes the next Beethoven or some shit like that, and TOWA sits down with Sota and they go through old photos and talk about Kagome. Moroha also threatens Roothead into negotiations, and goes on a massive shopping spree with Sota's credit card. We get a pretty cute goodbye scene with the girls and the Higurashis, and each is given a gift before they head out, with TOWA eventually promising to return. They call out to Roothead and offer him their pearls in exchange for a portal to the past, planning to trick him, obviously. However, their travel is cut off by the spirit of the Tree of Ages, who is taking on the form of Kikyo, leading the community to call her Trikyo. Apparently, because Kikyo's sacred arrow was embedded in the tree for so long, this was the form that was easiest for it to take. She asks them if they can slay a demon named Kirinmaru, the rival of their grandfather Toga. We learn that Kirinmaru is planning to twist time and return the world to a degenerate age. And of course, I have a video discussing what this means in our world's own Buddhism. If you're interested, go check it out. Consequently though, Kirinmaru isn't the only one they have to worry about, as TOWA and Setsuna's father Sesshomaru has also renounced the title of Great Dog General which he inherited, and is walking a similar path to Kirinmaru. The twins both refuse Trikio's offer, Setsuna on the basis that she doesn't know or care about her father, while Towa refuses to kill her father on principle. Trikio offers them one more chance to change their mind, but they refuse. And as such, she warps them to Roothead and a battle takes place. The demon turns off their Yoki, but Moroha manages to hit him with a Kappa foot to the eye and points out a weak spot in Roothead. She creates an opening and Towa gets her abilities back, triggers her pearl, and takes the demon out with the first Soryuha of the series. They arrive in the past and are greeted by Kaede and Kohaku, as Towa realizes that she just killed her only way home. Finally, we cut to a shot of the dream butterfly and see it flying behind Trikio as she is staring at the spirit of Rin within the tree. Sesshomaru approaches from behind, and Trikio mentions how if he forsakes her in the tree, she will never awaken. He simply turns around and walks away though. Episode 5, JAKOTSUMARU of the Red Bone Palace. There haven't been many things in Yashahime which have been on the excessively brutal or shocking side, but good god, JAKOTSUMARU was cool as hell. The episode opens with a shot of him confronting a bandit, and when the bandit attacks him, he just raises his fan and pulls the bones out of the bandit's body through his mouth. Something which I think the kids might call a yikes moment. We then cut to the end of the last episode when the girls are arriving into the past, but this time we get a different perspective as the camera pans up to Yotsume the owl, who is keeping tabs on them for one of the four perils named Kyuki, who might have been my favorite character design for the whole series so far, as short-lived as she was. She tells Yotsume to send JAKOTSUMARU after the girls. Over to the village, Towa and Setsuna are looking through books with Kohaku about the dream butterfly for information. However, they come up pretty short. That said, they quickly get pulled away as the villagers discuss the boneless bodies which have been showing up, so Kohaku sends the twins to look into it. We also meet Jubei here, a man whom Moroha owes some kind of debt, and is also the source of her bounty hunting contracts. This scene also brings Myoga back into the series, and he's the source of exposition and information that he always was. The final character we meet here is Takachiyo, a young tanuki who seems to outrank Moroha in some way, and who loves to pick on her. Much like Hachi in Inuyasha, will also essentially become a living bus that will bring our cast from one place to another. Meanwhile, the twins are stalking out the bridge that JAKOTSUMARU is known to be found at, and watch him vacuum the skeletons out of a whole pack of wolves and just yeet them into his pile. However, they come out and attack him, scaring him off pretty quickly. They chase him down and run into Moroha, and Myoga explains about the four perils and their leader Kirinmaru, also telling the girl that Tokotsu, the demon who they're about to face, is one of those perils. We also get a shot of how Moroha got her pearl, as she basically woke up next to a decapitated Tokotsu and stole it from him. It's implied but unclear if her Beniyasha form killed the demon. Speaking of which, in this fight, we see the girls taking on a small army of red skeletons, and Moroha uses her rouge to transform into Beniyasha, slaying JAKOTSUMARU and landing the first hit on Tokotsu. That said, this transformation seems to come at a price, as after a short time of the increased power, she passes out. After this, Setsuna begins a chant that she learned from Miroku, and Towa exorcises the demon, causing the palace to fade away. Episode 6, The Cat Juan at the Old Temple. Episode 6 was another reimagining of Inuyasha manga chapters that never made it into the series. It kicks off with Moroha cheerfully carrying a massive skull through town to Jubei's place, this time bringing Towa and Setsuna with her. Towa asks Jubei if he knows anything about the dream butterfly and explains their situation, but after a brief pause, Jubei says he doesn't know anything, but he'll keep his ears open. He does, however, know of an area nearby with a lot of missing people recently, and sends the girls there to check it out. On the way, they run into a girl, almost literally, who says her parents have been ignoring her to take care of cats. They bring her home and find the village with entirely too many fucking cats. Towa can't sense that they are demonic, but the other girls notice right away, leading to one of my favorite clips of the entire series, where Moroha just punts this cat across the road. They fend off the rest of the feline horde and chase them up the mountain where they find an old temple. The monk living here looks like an idol from the modern age, which apparently doesn't lead to anything relevant, and he invites them in and they talk about the ghost cats, but he doesn't seem to know anything about it. Finally, he invites them to stay the night. Apparently, he smells like a human, so they can more or less trust him, but they remain cautious, leaving themselves open to lure an attack on their own terms. We also have a moment where Towa asks what Moroha needs money for, and she quickly changes the topic and says it's time to pretend she's sleeping. The others follow suit, and during the night the cat demons pounce on them, quickly being defeated. The monk shows up to tell them about a demon who was sealed below the temple 100 years ago, not yet explaining that he was the one who tried to release it and ended up getting possessed, and the girls decide to investigate, with Setsuna and Moroha going under the temple to check it out, and Towa staying with the monk to keep him safe, setting up a barrier to keep other demons out. Moroha and Setsuna find the bones of the ghost cat, which emerge and reform into a giant cat demon, but it seems to keep reforming after taking damage. This is because the true demon was inside of the monk, who had locked himself in the temple with Towa with the barrier. Moroha pierces the barrier with her sacred arrow, allowing Setsuna to go in and help. However, Towa refuses to kill the demon because it would also kill the monk. The twins argue about Towa's naive ideology for a moment before Towa makes a move and uses her pearl to bind the demon, forcing it to show itself, before piercing it with her energy blade and absorbing it into the sword. Episode 7, Beating Through an Apple. Episode 7 was a big one for a few reasons. We got our first look at Kirinmaru and Riku, as well as a glimpse of Kyuki's true form. We also got the lead up to the first episode, where Towa is tied up in captivity by the feudal lord. The episode starts off with Towa fighting a spider demon with the demon slayers. She's clearly been working on her ability to sense demons, as it's gotten slightly better since last time. Setsuna and Hisui come together though and kill the demon with ease. We cut to a shot of Hyuki flying onto Kirinmaru's boat in her true form, which was fucking awesome to see. Also, I've mentioned I love her design, right? It's so damn cool. Anyways, she goes in to speak to Kirinmaru about Tokotsu's death, and about the 3 half-demons who were responsible. While she mentions them as Beniyasha and the daughters of Sesshomaru, Kirinmaru only really seems interested in the daughters of Sesshomaru part. That said, he also doesn't seem to remember who Tokotsu was until Kyuki explains it to him directly. The next morning, Towa wakes up to find that Setsuna has left with the demon slayers while she was asleep, leaving her alone, and as such, she decides to head to Mount Musubi to check it out, and to see if she can find the butterfly. Along the way, she runs into Riku, and as they're both lost, he decides to stick with her and hope that they find their way back to his ship. They stop for a rest and to have lunch, but not before Riku uses his blue pearl to control water and make it float. Riku thanks her for the food and says that as someone who was abandoned by his master, it's more than he deserves. As he leaves, he gives Towa his sword as a gift. Of course, he did leave out the fact that he stole the katana, which was the actual Kikujumonji, and as a result, Towa soon finds herself in custody and being accused of being a thief. This leads us back to the first episode, except this time we get the events from a shifted perspective, seeing Moroha and Setsuna looking for Towa. They get a ride from Takachiyo, and along the way they come across a polar bear yokai named Fubuki, who is another one of Kyuki's subordinates. We also learn here that Kyuki is attempting to collect the pearls herself so that she can overthrow Kirinmaru. The giant Fubuki, much like the cat demon, was just something produced by its real form. Its actual body was lurking behind Towa and waiting for an opportunity to pounce. Towa exudes some of her yoki so that she can draw the attention of Moroha and Setsuna, and Moroha manages to snipe Fubuki's true form from seemingly miles away and clear their path in the process. The rest of the episode plays out almost exactly the same as episode 1. Episode 8, The Dream Gazing Trap. This episode, while being good, definitely had its issues. We got to see some great glimpses of backstories, which definitely left us very curious, and the fights were definitely cool, but it ended really abruptly. It opens with Setsuna and Moroha chasing after Yotsume and Towa just behind them. She, unlike the other two, stops for Takachiyo though, and gets a ride from him. We also have the introduction of Takachiyo's Scooby snack addiction here as well. We cut to Jubei fishing and Riku showing up. We find out that Jubei is working for Riku and that he was given a green pearl. In terms of Riku himself, he says he likes Towa and dislikes the 4 perils, and while he wants them dead, he only kills those who he likes. He mentions that he will get the 3 princesses and their pearls, meaning Jubei is aware that someone is trying to kill them. We also see Riku using his pearl to create a stream of gold for Jubei. Now jump back to Yotsume, who is essentially leading the girls to Kyuki. She gives him a rainbow pearl to find out the girl's weaknesses, and he transforms into a more owl-like form that can shoot energy beams. He was quickly overpowered, however not before he was able to strike Towa, Moroha, and Takachiyo with his dream-gazing power. Setsuna is unaffected as she doesn't sleep or have dreams, but we do get to, well, gaze at their dreams. That said, Takachiyo and Moroha have swapped dreams, so Takachiyo watches as Inuyasha and Kagome prepare for battle with Sesshomaru and Kirinmaru. Baby Moroha is given her rouge from her mother, but she is taken away by Hachi to keep her safe. Moroha gets to watch Takachiyo be given to Jubei by Miroku, and Towa witnesses the dream butterfly taking dreams from Setsuna, and we later see the butterfly bringing those dreams to Rin in the tree. Now, it's important to note here that Towa wasn't seen in her own dream, and none of them were actually from the perspective of the person viewing the dream, so it's hard to tell what about this is fact and what about it is fictitious. Anyways, Setsuna kills Yotsume and the others wake up, they charge into Kyuki's cave to confront her, and Kyuki is able to use her pearl to turn off her opponent's Yoki, for example making it so that Moroha can't use her rouge and Towa can't use her sword. However, again Setsuna is immune. Or is she? While they fight in the cave, Setsuna doesn't use any of her demonic abilities and only keeps to using her own brute strength. That said, she is still able to be using her pearl, so it's a bit ambiguous. Either way, Kyuki's drain effect is more or less disabled once she transforms into her true form. She can still absorb energy directly, but no longer having the limiting aura. Setsuna holds Kyuki off while Moroha theorizes that Towa can absorb Yoki and rebound it back at the opponent, and Towa jumps into the fight to test this out, taking damage and hoping to bounce it back. She can't quite pull the trigger on killing the demon, until Setsuna gets hurt and Towa pulls off a massive Soryuha to take the demon down. After the battle, Kyuki lies on the ground reaching for her pearl, but Riku steps on her hand, then uses his own blue pearl to make her fade away. He then takes her pearl, leaving him as the only character to hold onto two at the current point in the story. Episode 9, MEIFUKU the MEIOJU. Episode 9 opens with our first look at the third peril, Konton, who uses his thunder and wind lions to attack some guards so that he can chill next to a tree. Jubei sends the girls after him, but only Moroha accepts at first. Once Jubei explains that Towa and Setsuna could put out a bounty for the dream butterfly though, they decide to join in. We get a moment where Moroha is riding Takachiyo, and she is more or less talking about how she is very lonely and she was hoping that she had finally found some family or friends that she could be with. That said, she is still yet to express those feelings to the twins. When the twins show up, Moroha has Takachiyo speed up and make them chase as a mini punishment for them leaving her alone at first. When she asks why they changed their mind, Setsuna lies and says they consider her a reliable friend, something which was likely said to spare her feelings. They continue towards Konton, and on the way they find a young demon child named MEIFUKU. The demon scurries off pretty quickly, and the trio continue on their way to the peril. A fight breaks out quickly, and the twins start struggling against the lions while Moroha goes after Konton. She can't even get close though. And even when she manages to land a hit, his armor is so thick that it doesn't matter. He has the trio on the ropes at first, but the young demon from earlier, MEIFUKU, swoops in and takes the trio away to save them. Naturally though, Konton sends his lions to chase after them. MEIFUKU explains to them that Konton killed their father and stole part of his impenetrable shell to become his armor. MEIFUKU plans to get revenge, but is looking to do so in 50 years. To which Moroha says no, and decides that now is a much better time, which lines up perfectly with the lions catching up to them and then releasing a talisman and summoning Konton to the area. Moroha pushes MEIFUKU into what would essentially be a death match with Konton, but the kid is too scared, so Moroha tries to wear them as armor. However, because Moroha is terrifying, she decides to become a shield for Towa instead. They manage to take out the lions this time, and Towa ends up fighting Konton. They can't get through to each other though, but Towa eventually floods his armor with Yoki to temporarily revivify the spirit of MEIFUKU's father in his armor. The demon's spirit holds Konton still long enough for Towa to slash the armor off, and then Setsuna and Moroha join in for a combo attack, leaving Konton weakened on the ground and forced to escape. Episode 10, The Gold and Silver Rainbow Pearls. The episode kicks off with a show of the Ka tribe's den, and we see as the babies try to murder each other, as well as getting a first glimpse at Snake Mommy. We cut over to the girls who have been hired to wipe out the adult Kinka and Ginka who have been terrorizing the countryside. As the demon siblings endlessly battle each other, they're continuously striking the land with fire and lightning. As the kids get the lowdown on what's happening, Kinka and Ginka show up, and then Towa tries to butt in to stop their fighting because siblings shouldn't fight like this. To which they promptly say, "Fuck you, eat some elements," launching an attack at her. They then explain that since the day they were born, they were bound together, and they were meant to have fought and killed each other so the weaker sibling could be eaten and the stronger sibling would be free and evolve, but they never managed to do so. They then notice the rainbow pearls in Setsuna and Towa and decide to retreat while they wait for an opportunity to take them. That night, the girls stay with a local villager, and Kinka and Ginka show up to possess them and force them to fight. Setsuna manages to reach for some demon-slaying poison in her elbow pouch, and this forces the demons out of them, however not before they manage to take the silver and gold pearls. With the pearls in their possession, they scoot out of there, and the girls call on Takachiyo to give them a ride. leaving Moroha behind just as she had done to them in the previous episode. Cut back to the demons, they meet up with Snake Mommy and she immediately turns on them, trying to absorb both the demons and the pearls into herself, starting with Ginka. Ginka goes into a rage to fight back, but is clearly outmatched, and the twins show up and start having flashbacks to their own past when they reached out for each other in similar ways to Kinka and Ginka, albeit Setsuna's memories are still pretty foggy. Kinka asks for help from the girls, and Setsuna holds Towa back, saying that she'll go in alone with Kinka. Once they get close enough, Kinka sets the Kanamitsu no Tomoe on fire, and with this, Setsuna's able to actually do damage to the demon. They free Ginka, and as Kinka tries to catch him, he is attacked, with Setsuna going in for the kill with one final powerful attack. The girls get their pearls back, but both Ginka and Kinka are done for, with Ginka already dead and Kinka on his last breaths. As he dies, both demons turn to dust and fade away just in time for Moroha to show up and realize that she won't get a bounty. Episode 11, Curse of the Man-Eating Pond. Yet another manga chapter that never made it into Inuyasha and which was reimagined for Yashahime. It starts out super cute with Setsuna playing her violin and Moroha cooking pancakes. That said, it looks like she's doing a pretty bad job as a chef, as she bites into it and she nearly chokes to death. She runs to the nearby pond for water, but Towa stops her along the way, and it's a good thing she did because there's not one but two dangerous demons living inside of it. Moroha sees one of them eating a bird, and the twins just blow her off saying that she's crazy. Cut to after the OP, and Kohaku is telling the twins to check out the man-eating pond, and they quickly realize that Moroha was probably right, so they go to check it out. On their way, Setsuna spots a boy and his sister fighting, and she sees the girl trying to hold him back from going to the pond, but he insists on getting revenge for his father's death. Setsuna goes to the boy and cuts that shit right out, and then with Towa they bring the kids back home, where they get a whole lore dump while they stay the night, learning that the pond used to be beautiful after a sage purified it, and he even planted medicinal herbs to keep it pure. Meanwhile, Moroha is on maid service at Jubei's place, and Takachio is making sure that she doesn't miss any spots. But next morning she goes out to find the twins, and sees them ready for battle with the pond demon, quickly joining them. She goes in for the first attack, but the venom serpent and the pond demon release poisonous toxins which weaken her, and then send her flying. This fight is basically here to show us that Towa and Setsuna have different form of poison resistances, with Towa resisting miasmas and Setsuna resisting venoms. Once this has been established, the fight was over pretty quickly. Setsuna uses her cyclone to send a bunch of medicinal herbs into the pond demon to purify it, and Towa slashes through the venom serpent with little effort. Episode 12, Night of the New Moon and the Black-Haired Towa. Here we get our first look at Towa's human form. Konton sends Niko-sen to take care of the girls, because Niko-sen was once a sage, and over time he gave in to evil, becoming a demon. As he used to be human, Konton assumes that he might know the weaknesses for the Hanyos. To lure the girls out, Niko-sen absorbs all of the energy from a mountain, making its trees and everything on it wither away. This spooks the villagers, and the girls are sent by Kohaku to check it out. Luckily, Moroha was also sent there on a mission by Jubei for bounty, and honestly, they might as well just combine the demon slayers and the bounty hunters at this point. They're doing the same jobs anyways. The girls naturally join up, and as they ascend the mountain, Towa begins getting winded, which is strange for such an easy mountain. Setsuna notes that something is wrong, and then Niko-sen appears and attacks, releasing sage venom into the air. Towa almost immediately faints, so Setsuna gets her out of there while Moroha holds off the demon. She does duck out for a moment to get a mask from Setsuna, and then returns to fight and manages to behead Niko-sen, but his head just floats away. Setsuna rides in after it on Kirara, and she sends Moroha to take care of Towa. Unfortunately, the head was a distraction, and the dismembered body catches Moroha and Towa off guard on the bridge as Towa completes her transformation into being a human. Niko-sen releases the bridge and drops them into the river down below, where they wash ashore, and Myoga shows up to explain how half-demons have new moons, which is a period where they become weakened or human. Supposedly, quarter demons are fine, along with anyone who can't dream or who isn't in their own time. Soon after this exposition, he helps Moroha build a barrier around the cave that they're hiding in. Anyways, Setsuna meets up with the rest of the demon slayers, and they had decided to burn down the mountain to take care of the demon. This fire unfortunately undoes Moroha's seal, and Niko-sen finds his way to the girls, turning them into stone before Setsuna shows up and frees them. Niko-sen appears behind her and is about to eat her, but just then the sun begins to rise. Towa regains her Hanyo form and takes it down with a Soryuha. Episode 13, The Delicious Feudal Monks. Episode 13 is the first episode since episode 1 to have a heavy focus on the original cast. The fourth peril, Totetsu, is being led to virtuous monks with his orange pearl and devouring them. Because of this, Kohaku orders Hisui and the twins to head up to Miroku's place to guard him. Moroha will be spending this episode protecting a different temple under Jubei's orders, and the final group of demon slayers will go to other famous nearby temples. So we jump over to Miroku, who is doing a 1,000-day training regimen to attain some kind of divine power to make up for his lack of wind tunnel, and he's currently on day 800. Hisui has a bitterness towards his father as he believed that he was a coward who ran away from battle, while the rest of the demon slayers kept fighting. However, it doesn't look like Sango or Gyokuto also share this feeling. Speaking of, Sango is in a few scenes. God, I miss Sango. At first, Setsuna doesn't recognize Miroku as the man who sealed her demonic powers because he looks so ragged and shaggy, but soon she remembers. Anyways, Totetsu shows up fairly soon into the episode, and he's a genuine challenge for the girls. There's been a lot of people saying that they aren't struggling at all, but I don't really understand that argument, especially lately. Tonton was severely overpowering them, and it was only with the help of Meifuku's dad's spirit that they caught him off guard. On top of it, it was still 3 against 1, and in Totetsu's case, he was holding off both of the twins, Hisui and Miroku, all at once, and drastically overpowering them. Like, it wasn't even close for most of the fight. His abilities allowed him to basically become a human wind tunnel, sucking in and swallowing everything in front of him, and then ejecting it if he needs to. Miroku originally looks like he's running from battle, but he returns with his staff shortly afterwards. He tells Hisui to throw poison into the demon's mouth, thinking that it would work like the wind tunnel, and he plants his staff into the ground, becoming human bait in the process. However, once the demon eats the poison, he just shoots it out as an energy wave, and it hits Hisui, taking him out of the battle. Setsuna asks Miroku to undo the seal here, and she goes full demon, plunging her hand into Totetsu's mouth and filling him with poison, causing him to flee. We learn that in this form, Setsuna's blood is basically poison, and it hurts like hell if she remains in it for too long. Setsuna has Miroku redo the seal, and she has a talk with Towa about the possibility that she would have a similar ability which she inherited from Sesshomaru. Then we have a shot of Sango making masks for the demon slayers, and the inference that Hisui has forgiven his father. And there you go, a full run-through of the entirety of Yashahime so far. If I had to pick 2 episodes that I loved the most and 2 I disliked the most, I think episode 4 and 13 were my favorites so far, with 4 being a big lore episode where we learn more about Toga and Kirinmaru, and 13 just being a really solid fight episode with a demon I liked a lot and who had a ton of personality. As for the weakest episodes, I think episodes 6 and 3 might be the low points. Not a whole lot happened in episode 3 overall, there were a couple cute and funny moments, but nothing phenomenal. And the cat episode, I mean, yeah. Overall, though, I'm pretty happy with the story so far. It isn't the best anime I've ever seen, but it's definitely not the worst either. It's overall pretty average. I think a lot of people are being overly emphatic about it, and I think a lot of people are being overly critical about it. It's by no means a masterpiece, but again, it's not the next Boruto. But that's just my opinion. Let me know your favorite moments and episodes in the comments down below, as well as what you think about the series as a whole as well. If you enjoy this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content, but with that all being said, a big thank you goes out to our patrons as always, the Dai Yokai Miasma and Ikerochu, our Yokai Lucifina Akuma, and our Hanyo Jasmine Morales, Michael Greco, Negakitty, Simon Electric, Anthony Hogan, Brunette Thrasher, and Randy Moseyman. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, remember to stay excellent.